Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about making the switch in your brain to different activities. And the reason I was thinking about this is because recently we were up at the lake house and I had been on vacation for basically a week. I was working on that vacation, but not really working. So, really enjoying my family, having a good time. And we got back on a Sunday, and Monday morning I needed to start work. And I found myself really struggling. Sometimes I go on vacation and I come back and I am ready to work. But this particular time, I really was struggling to make the transition into work mode. So vacation mode to work mode. And I was really having a rough go of it. Like, I really didn't want to work. And I think part of it was because all my family was off. I was still kind of in vacation mode and trying to rest. And a little bit of this is, and you guys know this is to be true as well. But this particular vacation, it was with some family, and it was with my family. And so even though I was on vacation, I was still doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, taking the kids early in the morning because I'm the one who likes to wake up early. And so it wasn't true vacation, but it was like an enjoyable experience, right? It was a trip. We'll call it, rather than vacation, we'll call it a trip, but it was a really enjoyable trip. So I was really struggling to make that change from being on a trip to going back to work. And I was just thinking about how if you've had this experience, you understand what I'm talking about, kind of like making that transition, that we have the same problem switching in design, in particular between mediums. So I'll have like a fabric designer who's doing like patterns and stuff, and then we have to make a switch to sell it a totally different way. And how that transition sometimes feels very, very hard. It feels very difficult. If you've done this before, you know what I am talking about. Like fabric to then an SVG, or fabric to a printable, or maybe let's do it the other way. Like you're making a printable and then extracting the artwork and selling it as clip art. Like some of these transitions feel very difficult. We're actually having this issue in my personal, a couple of my stores, because we have all this artwork now, and I generally don't sell artwork. I generally sell something that's formatted a certain way, like an SVG or a pattern. And I am having trouble wrapping my mind around, and I need to sit down and figure it out, all the formats I want to sell it in, the sizing I want to sell it in, and getting it zipped up and put up there. It is so silly, you guys. It feels silly, but it's actually not. It's our brain having to do extra work to figure out what the next step is, making that switch over. So here's what I want to tell you. First of all, you're not alone if you're trying to make a switch and it's hard. Second of all, the biggest advice I can give you is to stop making that switch as often as you are. So one of the things I see often is designers trying to like do a fabric line and then they'll do an SVG in the same day. Your brain isn't wired to do that. It doesn't feel good to make a huge switch. It's much easier to batch and create the same thing over and over again. And by doing so, what happens is your brain isn't having to put in all of that extra energy and power to making a switch. At the end of the day, we're human beings. At some point, possibly we were caveman, and the goal was to survive. And that meant outputting less energy, okay? And so our brain doesn't like to have to make huge switches and try to figure out something new, which is what we're doing when we switch from medium to medium to medium to medium. That's exactly what we're doing. And it's creating more energy, more thought, more difficulty. And how many times do I see a designer just give up at that point, right? Because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel exciting. It's frustrating, right? So what your goal is to do is to minimize the amount of switching around you do. So in a single day in particular, this is a micro example, I will design maybe 10 SVGs, like I'm working on SVGs. I will not do really different SVGs. They will all be in the same category very often. Very often, especially if I'm doing 3D cards, like I will do 10 or 20 and design 10 or 20 3D cards all at one time. Why? My brain's not switching around. It's not trying to make a tag and a card and a 3D house. My brain doesn't like that. It's hard, even within a medium. It definitely is not going to like it if I do that and then I try to go design a fabric line in the same day. It just doesn't like it. So instead, when I sit down and I start designing, I get very, very focused and I design one type of thing at a go. If I'm doing all quotes, I'm doing all quotes. If I'm doing all 3D projects, I'm kind of staying in the same realm of 3D projects. It's just easier on my brain. It just is. So hopefully that helps you. And if you felt like really distressed because you're switching around a lot, first of all, trying to minimize that. Second of all, it's ridiculously normal. Your brain doesn't like it. It doesn't like it when it goes from a trip or a vacation to work. It doesn't like it actually when you go even the opposite way. Like I struggle. It's so funny. I struggle from work to vacation. Why? Because I feel myself stressing out, trying to finish all these work things before I go on vacation. That's normal, okay? It's a switch. Anytime we switch to a new thing, our brain does not like it. Or if it likes it, it's still outputting a lot of energy, so it feels difficult or feels hard, or we might feel exhausted. That's the other thing that will happen. Because maybe you'll be very excited about switch. Like, sometimes I'll have a designer who's like, I'm trying to do this. It doesn't feel good, so I'm going to do fabric. Great, let's do fabric. They get into it. They're excited about that switch felt easy, but maybe their brain is on fire because they're making that switch. So they're a little tireder at night. They need a little more sleep or they need a little bit more help. It's because there's resistance, you guys. Part of being a designer, all the different areas that we're focusing on has resistance, and switching from thing to thing, there's friction and resistance. So we're just doing our best to eliminate as much resistance as we can as we're designing. So hopefully that helped. Some of you who are in that mode, just keep working on it. Try to eliminate as much as you can. And then if I've hopefully normalized it for you, that you're going to be okay when it happens, you can say, oh, Carina told me this would happen, that this might feel a little difficult and a little bit hard. And once we normalize it, it makes it a little bit easier to move forward, which is amazing. All right, if you are on the podcast, I'm going to urge you and ask you and plead with you, will you please leave a review? It honestly makes such a big difference. And even if it's just a couple of words saying that you like the podcast, that's really helpful to us. And so I just really appreciate it. If you're on the YouTube channel, would you mind subscribing to the channel? If you're here listening, watching, doing all the things, we would love for you to know all the things that we have coming out. And we do output a lot of great content for designers, for crafters, for fabric folks, for quilters. And our goal is just to make it entertaining, educational, and we really appreciate it when you subscribe to our things, because it helps us know that you are liking it and that you're appreciating that we come out with this content for you. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys soon. Hey, did you know that you can visit me at makeanddesign.com to learn more about this podcast and join my VIP group for weekly freebies? I can't wait to see you there.